Beaver dams up a river or a stream and changes the whole environment. So the interaction is called ecology. And there's a hierarchy. You have an individual organism. And actually, let me go to this picture here. It shows it. That's a single organism. But if you get a lot of organisms together, you have a population. And that's what this chapter's on. It's about populations and how they develop. If you have many different populations in the same area, we call that a community. A population of fish, a population of coral, a population of sea anemones. That's a community.
So it's like
many different populations together. And then if you have all the populations together interacting, including the environment, the water, the temperature of the water, the amount of light in the area, all the abiotic factors, all the non-living factors, we call that the ecosystem. The population and the abiotic factors. That's called the ecosystem. And so the way this unit is arranged is they talk about populations for a chapter, then communities for a chapter, then ecosystems for a chapter. And then we're done with the book. We start reviewing.
It's our last chapter.
What is that? We have like a test and there's like 4 chapters and then there's like a short
Then there's
test.
a half test.
Okay.
Worth half a test.
Worth half the test?
Yeah, over 2 chapters.
Was this our last chapter?
This is our last unit.
Are we taking like review tests?
Yep.
Do they count as test scores? When we take your
Final exam
your
grade.
final exam test,
No,
well,
like
not
no,
our
like in
review
history last year we took like these like
We took a
review
test
tests over like different periods of time and they counted as
We'll do
I don't
like
have
one-
anything like that.
We'll do like one big final.
I have a big final.
The day when we have our final, like, for your class, like the lab exam and then the other 2, is that just during your class?
Yeah.
Or am I going to miss school?
Yeah, there's 2 classes.
There's like part 1 and part 2.
I feel like
For just your class?
Yeah.
Isn't it
Why?
Monday there's a lab test, and Thursday and Friday there's a regular test.
That's the lab test.
It's over the lab.
He like does it during his class.
Well, it was really special over the lab.
Wait, what are we doing?
All right, back to this. Nice.
What is that?
Are we gonna like review the first semester stuff?
Yeah, we're gonna review as much as we can.
Like how long are we gonna have to review this?
We have 2 weeks of review and exam time.
It's on the
Syllabus.
It's on the 13th, right? The
Yeah.
Okay.
it's graph.
Mm-hmm. 13th of May. Be there. So here's a funny population video.
What's a bias?
It's actually a stupid population video.
The communities on Earth
What
whose
about
members
the
exist
video
in air,
about
water, and land.
The man with the backwards hair. Is it? What happened with the babies?
Yeah, now there's just a lot of babies sitting around like.
The biosphere is everything on the Earth. All the living things on the Earth and where they live is called the biosphere. It's basically the whole surface of the Earth, where living things are found. We call that the biosphere. So, those are just some general terms. Now, this first section talks about how populations are distributed. And there's 3 real ways we see populations distributed out there. There is a clump arrangement, where there's a clump of organisms here, and then a bunch of organisms there, and a bunch of organisms there. You often see plants that reproduce with heavy seeds that are blown by the wind in clumps. Because one plant will grow somewhere and then release some seeds, and they'll fall near it. So you end up with a clump of plants in one area. And, pine trees grow like this. Humans have a clumped distribution. Have you noticed that? No. Cities. You have New York City with a whole bunch of people. And then Atlanta has a whole bunch of people. Washington, D.C. has a whole bunch of people. And in between, there aren't nearly as many. That's a clumped distribution for humans. Is that interesting? Social animals often have this type of distribution because they live in groups. Are you with me, Steph? You don't like this stuff, do you? This is a random arrangement. Just randomly here and there. Sometimes organisms that have small populations are randomly arranged. Maybe weeds that have real small seeds that can float for hundreds of miles on the wind, just randomly land in different places. Random distribution. And then you have a uniform distribution, where there's about the same amount of distance between each organism. Desert plants often have a uniform distribution because they spread out their roots and they take up water, you see, and each plant, there's only so much water around, so each plant has to live a certain distance away from the next plant or it won't be able to get enough water. And you get them very evenly spaced. Often animals that are territorial have an even distribution. Like, dogs often do this, or wolves, they have a territory that they guard, and no one's allowed in their territory. And so they end up pretty evenly spaced around.
But I thought wolves were packing this.
What's that?
I thought wolves lived together.
Well, yeah, but each pack would have its own area that it hunts in.
Don't wolves like?
I guess that's not as good as an example.
Don't wolves like
Solitary creature.
seek revenge or something? Like
I don't know.
they're the only animal other than humans that actually want revenge.
Really?
Will hunt something down. Something like that.
I don't know. They're pretty mean. I've never really messed with them. I had a dog that was mean.
Is that an albino rat?
I think my dog wanted to seek revenge. What's that?
Is that an albino rat?
This one?
Yeah.
I don't know. Oh, that one?
Yes, that one.
Yeah.
The big one.
That's albino.
Why is every rat and mouse in this book albino? I noticed that.
They're lab mice. They're albino for a reason.
Why?
Yeah, albino is when you have two recessive genes that where neither of them code correctly. They have a mutation where they don't make melanin. And so if you get two of those recessive genes, and then your body can't make melanin, and melanin is the colored portion.
But why
You can have an albino person.
I don't know why they use
When
it.
we went to the Dominican Republic,
never
there
seen
was
an
an
albino
albino
person?
kid there.
Yeah,
They're scary, aren't
Yeah,
they?
they're creepy looking.
Really?
You've never seen one?
yeah, they totally white hair,
Yeah.
Really?
It's really weird.
Yeah.
white
they're-
skin.
I've seen like two.
Yeah.
Real light colored skin. Now the reason why they're showing you this
albino animals.
is they're
I've
discussing
only seen albino animals.
a term called biotic potential, which is denoted by the letter R. R is known as the rate of natural growth. And rhinos have a very low rate of natural growth. That means their population will not grow quickly. Because a rhino takes about a year to have a baby rhino, and then it's got to raise the baby rhino, and the baby rhino is very slow to mature. And rhinos are very long-lived creatures. So to get a bunch of rhinos out there, it takes a long time. Humans have a pretty slow rate of natural growth. Because a human, once it's born, takes about 13, 15 years before it's even capable of reproduction. And usually humans only have one kid at a time. Mice have a very fast reproductive rate. What is that? Something making noise? Mice can have a litter of mice at a time, maybe 8 or 10 of them, and they're able to reproduce within a year. Or even less, maybe. I'm not exactly sure what the number is. But they're very fast reproducing species.
So within a year of being born, they can reproduce?
Yeah, they can have babies again. And so you can end up getting a lot of mice real quick. Insects usually have a very high rate. And the way this R value works is it's a number that if you take one organism and it averages 2 more organisms, it has 2 babies in a year, your R value would be 2. If it has 5 babies a year that grow to adulthood in a year, your R value would be 5. And this R value you can use it to multiply versus the population that's present to figure out what the population will be in the future.
Wait, so it's the number of babies they have a year that grow to be able to reproduce?
That's correct.
That they didn't have to grow to be able to reproduce in a year, or just
It's basically the growth rate of the population as a whole. So they give you an example of of a problem that you might see with this. If the number for a population of 1,000, so if our population starts at 1,000 individuals, and in a year 30 people are born and 10 people die. So 30 born, 10 die. Then how many what's your new population?
So it would be 3 over.
1,020. You've added 20 to the population. And the way they do this mathematically, and this is on page 841, by the way, I don't have this on my overhead, is 30 minus 10 over 1,000 is going to give you 20 over 1,000, which is .02, which is 2%. Has a 2% growth rate for that population. And so the the R for this population I think would be 1.02.
Where'd that one?
I think I was calling it.
Yeah.
Because if you multiply 1.02 times 1,000, you'll get the new population.
Well, how did you find out it was 1.02?
Because it's a 0.02 increase. It's a 2% increase for that year. So I just added the 0.02 to 1.
Can I ask a question?
Well, if you multiply 1,000 by 1, what do you get? So that'll mean it's not growing at all. If your R is exactly 1, you're not getting any increase. But if you multiply 1,000 by 1.02, then you'll get 1,020, you'll get the new population. The R is a value used to figure out what the population will be later.
So the rate of natural growth would be 1.02.
That's right.
Okay.
Well,
So all you do is, so if you say, if we had a problem, it would say, like this, 30 were born, 10 died. You just put 20 over 1,000.
It depends how they ask. If they ask you for the R, you would want a number like 1.02.
Okay.
If they ask you for the percent growth, you'd want 2%.
Okay.
It depends how they ask you.
Couldn't you just add the 2% then over to the 1,000 that you already had?
Say that again louder.
Like, couldn't you add 2% to the 1,000 and get 1?
Yeah.
And get 1?
Get 120 or 1020.
If you added 2% to 1,000?
Yeah. 1,000.
Add 2% of 1,000 to 1,000 and you'll get 1. That's exactly what you do if you multiply this by that. It's the same problem you're doing.
Will R always be 1 or?
No,
will
if a
change?
population's going down, can you guess what the R value would be?
Negative.
To be like 0.8.
Yeah, let's say the R value was 0.8. And I multiplied 1,000 by 0.8. A population would go down, right? What's 1,000 times 0.8? 800. So a population would go from 1,000 to 800 if R is less than 1.
Well, I mean, like that 1 that you added to the 0.2. Like, you always add the percent.
Yeah, the percent growth you can add to 1.
And it won't go any higher or lower.
It won't go any higher. No, this would make it go higher. If you add 2% to 1, 1.02 multiplied by 1,000 will make the 1,000 go higher.
If you just move the decimal over something, the same thing as that.
I'm not sure what you're saying.
Like, it's just the same thing as timesing it by 1,000, just moving the decimal 3 places over.
However you want to do your multiplication. You'll have a calculator, so you can do it on a calculator.
Good thing.
How do you get to R though? Like, how would you get from like the percent to R or something?
Well, if it's let's say we got 100 individuals, 100 new individuals live and 30 die.
Okay.
So, and there's 1,000. We start. Let's change what we start the population with. Let's say we start the population with 500. Make it a harder problem. Okay. So what's 100 minus 30? 70 new individuals in the population. Over 500. What percentage is that? Anybody have a calculator?
I'm so hungry.
It's 20 something.
Like, I'm like about to die.
Or 1 point something. No.
70 by 500.
2 point something.
14%?
14%.
Yeah.
No. Oh, ever.
So what's our rate of natural growth?
1.14.
1.14.
Why is that a 1?
But if it's not a population and it's just like one organism that has 3 kids in a year, it's 3, right?
1.14.
That's right. If you go from 1 organism to 4 organisms, then your rate of natural growth is going to be 4, actually. That would be a real fast rate of natural growth. That'd be maybe like a bacteria or something that's multiplying rather quickly. Why do you add it to 1? Because if your R is exactly 1, 500 times 1 is going to be 500.
Populations to go up.
So to make the population go up, your R is going to have to be greater than 1. To make your population go down, your R is going to have to be less than 1. The R is not going to be negative, because there's no such thing as a negative population. You can't have less than 0 kids.
So if your R was 0.
If your R was 0, that means the population went extinct.
That would be good.
These show bluegrass plants at different ages. And young bluegrass plants, most of them are alive, some die. They tend to reach the peak of their, most of them live, I guess from 6 to 9. When do you have the biggest amount of death here? Yeah.
Yeah, it's
6 to 9. Most of them are dying around then.
What is it?
A cohort is a group of individuals that are all about the same age. And let me show it to you in graph form. There's 3 different types of lifestyles that organisms have, 3 different ways of going through their lives. You have one type of organism here, like this bluegrass, where they are living, most of them survive at an early age, and then they tend to die later in life. Bluegrass kind of is like humans. humans live at an early age, but die way later in life. Compare that to mosquitoes. Mosquitoes, you see, 1 million mosquitoes might be born, but almost all of them die real early. And so you see there, this graph showing number of survivors, you see the number of survivors fall off real early because most mosquitoes die as young. They're eaten by fish and stuff because they're hatched in lakes. So most mosquitoes die early.